Welcome, welcome, welcome. What am I looking for? We're gonna hop right in it tonight. We're actually gonna open up with our own clip tonight. Caught a little heat for this one. Not like any real heat, but a little pushback from individuals. So I'm Pastor Mike Will, Black Dance Club. New pod alert. New pod did drop today. We're gonna go over that. We're gonna open up with a clip here that we had from last week's pod. Today's pod did drop. Let me see if I can pull up the pods real quick here. Man, I be going so many places on this computer. Y'all gonna make sure I never do anything. Never gonna have to show y'all my porn list over here. I can't pull up anything accidentally. All right. Today's pod dropped. Recorded today. We talked about the tour. We opened up, talk about Usher, Chris Brown tour. Being that both of them have both had successful residency, successful tour, going on tour together. We didn't talk about stay-at-home boyfriends. Maybe stay-at-home husbands might be a better way to describe it. Is that going to become a thing? Is it problematic? I don't. I like it. I definitely. If I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home husband, 100% would take advantage of that. I'd be in the best shape of my life, and I'd be playing the best golf of my life. And the kids I have all A's because dad would be doing all the homework. So, yeah, I would have no problem with that. But that's sort of not the topic. Then we talked about whether or not Gucci Mane is snitching and if that's still a thing in the black community. I'm low-key over the whole snitching thing. I mean, I do believe that if you're in the streets and you do stuff in the streets, that, it should be handled in the streets. But I think street things need to remain with street people. The moment anything in the streets cross over to the civilian world, I low-key think all bets are off. And some of this might be age, talking. But if at 23, if this would have occurred to me and, I was quote unquote snitched on because it leaked over into the civilian world, I think that's fair. So that's kind of the conversation we had about Gucci Mane. What's up, Walker? Then we talked about the family of Ashley Janae creating a GoFundMe and her wealthy fiance. We're gonna talk about that for a split second tonight, because in our group chat we're having a conversation about sugaring and sugar babies, and I guess we're low key debating the morality of it. I think it's okay. I think it's fine. I think it's perfectly okay, and I think that when men have a problem with sugaring, it's because they can't sugar, right? Whether it's because they can't because they're married or they can't because of funds. But I honestly do not find a problem with it. I really, really don't. But we're going to discuss that for a split second night. We're not going to discuss a young lady because I don't have a clue of her situation, right? But I do know that the people that consume her content, I do have a clue of what's going on with them. Then we talked about Jada Pinkett Smith, went into politics, talked about the administration, door dashing, everything else. Whether or not Deanna Rasuni should have resigned, I think she should not have. I think us trying to have any moral standard in this country right now is asinine. Right? They have a whole file. They have what 6 million, pieces of content in a file for a guy that is dead. So you can't even he's not even innocent until proven guilty. Supposedly he's dead, and we still can't get that file out, right? Which means that there's people working at the highest level of business and government that have influence, right? It might be compromised, and we don't find that to be important enough to reveal who they are, right? So I'm sorry, I really don't give a damn about a reporter that's sleeping with a head coach. I don't. Fuck out of here. Cursing way too early in this live. Then we finish up with we got to ask the black dad question about black men vocalizing their failures, and I'm actually gonna dive into that a little bit deeper tonight, and then we finish up with sports. But the question that came in on the pod, we answered it at the minute 26 mark. I want to discuss that tonight. We're going to discuss sugaring, right? We're going to discuss this sugar baby thing, because I think a lot of people really don't understand it. And being that I'm not from the sugar baby community because I'm not rich. If I was rich, I'd be from the sugar baby community. I really wouldn't care. Right? I'm not married, so like, what else are you gonna do? Okay. So we're gonna discuss that tonight, but we're gonna open up with the clip that we played last week because, like I said, we low key had like a little pushback on this last week. Like, a lot of people didn't really know what to post publicly. Because they know I would respond, so feedback got back to me. So let's play this and let's go. Let's start here tonight.
God doesn't have a religion.
Okay.
Yeah, no, like, seriously, like, he doesn't. He exists if you think God is real, right?
Absolutely.
He just exists, right?
Yes.
He doesn't have a religion. Religion is our interpretation of how to connect with him. So we all have different interpretations of how to connect with him, but most religions will tell you that the other religions are bad. There's no proof for that. The same way there's no proof. People gonna find this a little sacrilegious, right?
Okay.
But there's no proof of God, right?
Okay.
People get upset when you say that, right? But even if you,
and that's where everybody got mad at me, right? Because everybody was, I was getting that. I know that God is real, right? And I'm not debating anybody's experience with the supernatural, right? What I was expressing here is that in the book that you're supposed to believe in, right, there's numerous examples of people who God found favor in that question God, right? And I'm not going to go through every example, right? But I believe that even Gideon, right, who's a story that's undersold, not told enough, might not know who he is, right? But he was like, I think God called him to go and fight whoever. I forget who they were supposed to fight. Midianites, Moabites, who knows, right? But anyway, supposed to go off the battle, and he was like, hey, if I'm supposed to go off the battle, he was like, make this cloth wet and the ground dry in the morning. Comes out, cloth is wet, ground is dry, right? He still didn't believe. He said, okay, make this cloth dry and the ground wet in the morning, right? Next morning, that's what happened. I'm out of inverse that there, right? But there's numerous examples of people questioning, right, their beliefs. And what's always remarkable is that, people take the Bible was inspired. It was written, right? That's it. Right? People have turned the Bible into God. Bible is not God. If you believe in God, God is God, right? The Bible is a collection of writings about him. These are two entirely different things, right? God, right? A person that developed universes, right, cannot be encapsulated in a book. All right. But again, I'm not making it sacrilegious, right? But people, I get it, right? People was like, no, I know that he's real. I am not questioning your faith. But by your own admission, it's not called your no. It is called your faith. Do not take what I'm saying to derail you or make you have doubts. I was not trying to do that. That's not why Gavin clipped this clip, right? But what I am saying here is that what you say that you have, which is faith, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, right? Listen to the definition, right? Because if this is your religion, this is from Paul. Faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Excuse me. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen, right? It is a belief. Was not attacking anybody's religion. I could care less what religion you are. All right. So just wanted to dive in that. Just wanted to express that from last week. That clip right there, like I said, we come from very, very religious background. We're in the South, so a lot of people that follow us follow religion. So I didn't want it to become something that is not. This had nothing to do with what you believe. If I could possibly care less, I would. But I can't. I can't care less. Okay. So, all right. Now, what we're gonna hop in, and before I play this clip right here,
Malcolm.
I know y'all see the swirler clip. We're gonna get to this. But before we get there, I had a question that was asked on Ask the Dads, and I said I was gonna dive into it a little bit deeper tonight, right? So the question that we got in was, what's up with high-profile black men vocalizing their glorification of success and generalizing their failures, right? For example, Jamal Bryant just did this with the Target boycott. It seemed as though he was successful when he did it. He was talking about everything he did, right? But when it was unsuccessful, and I'm paraphrasing here, he was like, we black men need to, right? Then he kept going. He was like, Derrick Jackson, the same thing, right? Derrick Jackson was like, you guys need to do this, right? And then when he got caught, it was like, hey, as men, we need to do better here, right? So he was like, basically he was saying that in the black community, black women's narrative work in the opposite way. When one reaches a level of success, they say, oh, look what black women as a collective has achieved, right? So when they look at Oprah, they don't look at Oprah and say, oh, look at what Oprah achieved, right? What they say is, oh, look at what black women can achieve, right? They look at Michelle Obama. It's not, hey, look at what Michelle Obama achieves, right? Hey, look, you too can be the first lady. He's absolutely right here, right? And he was saying, what could we do to change black men's image? And this is where I tell him that, on the pod, I was like, this is where I become missing 13 books. They're actually missing more than 13 books. But here's the thing when it comes to the Bible, Walker, is that there's a lot of Gnostic gospels. So some books you really don't know who the authors are, but you can tell from the reading patterns that they was written in the same area, perhaps the same people. So like Mark was the first book written, right? Matthew wasn't the first book in the New Testament. So it's like Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, right? They could tell that those books sort of go together, right? But there's Gnostic gospels, right? Like the Gospel of Thomas, that you could tell is a different writer, or in that book, right? So the council, Nicene Council, they came together. They kind of decided what books would go into the Bible. That was under Constantine. But even beyond that, though, the Catholic Church took out a lot of books of the Bible. But they actually didn't do it nefariously, right? They weren't trying to hide knowledge. These were the most educated people at the time. So these were your PhDs. And they could kind of tell which books did not belong, right? So like the Book of Thomas did not belong. Book of Enoch probably did belong. Like that might be one that they messed up on. Like even Paul referenced the Book of Enoch in the New Testament. But so I mean they messed up in a few places. But most of the books that they left out, I've read most of them, and they are they're clearly not the same as the Bible. So give them a little slack, and it's the same thing with Islamic books. It's the same thing if you read the Vedas, all right, which is Hinduism. Same thing if you read Taoist scriptures, right? I think the most popular book in Taoist scriptures in the United States is called the Tao of Pu. And if you read it, it explains Taoism to you in the most simplest terms, and you completely understand Taoism. And I had a class with one of the foremost experts in the country on Taoism, and he made us read the Tao of Pu and then write a paper on it. And then he told us how that book had nothing to do with Taoism. I gotta laugh to this day because that's fucked up. He got us, man. He really, really got us. And then he taught us, Taoism and how to read Taoism. When it comes to religion, most people don't know how to read the text. The best way to read any type of religious text is to read the era that it was written in, and then look at a historical reference of what's going on in that era. It'll kind of give you an insight into what you're reading, because you'll understand the audience a lot better. So, not to jump there. Anyway, back to my man's question on why in the black community, why when it comes to black men, we privatize the gains and we socialize the losses. Because that's what women do. And the black community is matriarchy right now. Right? It just is. It is ran by women. And it's by design, but it also occurred by accident. Right? Black men have never been members of the patriarchy. So when feminism took hold and it starts taking a rise from the early 1900s in the black community when it comes to black women, black men were not seen as patriarchs. Black men was not even seen as men, right? As late as the 1950s, maybe the 1960s, right? So there's no way a boy would be a patriarch, right? So we were never seen that way, right? But feminism was taking off, right? So what happened is, if you're practicing feminism, right? Feminism has to lean against a villain, right? Which in feminism, we look at that villain as being the man, right? Unfortunately, that's not the truth in feminism, and what I'm about to say right now has really only started being studied from like 2014 to 2018 is the beginning of it. So everything I say right now, people are going to disagree with it, but 4 years from now, it's going to be studied, right? It's going to be what they're studying because you're at the beginning of black male studies. So in feminism, again, right, you think that the enemy is the patriarch, right? It is not. When feminism came to be, right, and this is going back to the young man's question. Well, when feminism came to be, it was because of the abolition of slavery worldwide. So feminism takes off in the UK or Europe as we think of it now, right? And when we think of Europe as being, France, Germany, the UK, Spain. When the abolition is occurring, that's not what the UK is. That's not what Europe is. Europe is pretty much the UK. France is flailing right now, right? Because they're going into the French Revolution. They're broke. The Kingdom of Prussia is the actual kingdom right now, right? So Germany, Holland, Poland, maybe Poland. Okay, I might be getting my country mixed up. Anyway, that area, right? That whole Germanic area, right? That's the Kingdom of Prussia, right? So when they're removing, when they're having the abolition of slavery, that kingdom is going up. Portugal's falling off. Spain is falling off. France is falling off. UK is hanging on, right? And like this Germanic area, right? Dutch West Indies Company made a fuck ton of money, but they kind of got out of slavery, right? There was really no Dutch Netherlands slave countries once they left the West Indies, right? So they had already moved to manufacturing. So when they come up with this idea of the abolition of slavery, they don't care because they're not really relying on slave labor, right? These other countries are. So when they're freeing these men, the women in these areas start saying, well, whoa, right? We live in a society where it's the patriarchs, right? Which were rich white men. And then there's, white women. Are you telling us that these men that are beneath us, black men, are now going to be equal to white men? Now, notice that I say equal to, right? And notice how uncomfortable anybody feel when I say these black men are moving from here to not being in charge, right? But being equal to. That's always been the problem when it comes to talking about the patriarchy, right? It's because no one feels comfortable with saying we're taking black men from here and we're putting them here, right? Black men never asked for that. Black men pretty much are just like, yo, just compete. Let me compete and let's see where I end up at, right? Now, of course, black men knew where they were going to end up at, right? But they were just like, hey, I don't need you to create a way. I need you to get out the way, right? Two completely different sentences. Now, I go through all that to say is that with feminism, it had to hold back black men behind white women. So when our daughters and sisters went to the academies, that's what they were taught. That's what they weren't taught that, you know what, the most ideal man is going to be the man that's going to be most egalitarian, right? The man that's not holding you back. The man that doesn't have power, that's growing with you, right? That's not what they were taught. They were taught man bad, woman good. And that type of thinking created a very matriarchal mindset. It created a mindset to whereas men believe if you followed up, you know, your mothers and your grandmothers and your aunts, right, that you believe that there's an inherent evil in you, right? And the only way to get around that is to put yourself up under a deity, right? And what we've done is deified our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, right? We've deified them, right? Like they can do no wrong. So when we ask, like, yo, why do Jamal Bryant or Derek Jackson, why, you know, it's me, right, when I'm trying to show that I'm important, right? But when it's a screw up, it's like, well, it's all black men. Well, that's the teachings of the academy. That's the teachings under feminism, is that, you know, your issues are due in part to how men in your community are treating you. And that just simply has not been true in the black community. Dare I say ever. But let's pull it up real quick here. But let's hop into, and I know we got this plan right here. I'm gonna get the sugar in. I'm gonna get to it. But let's hop into my boy. This goes into the conversation that I started the pod with.
X. Sir, what's the real reason why you two men split? Is it merely ideological, or is it personality? What else?
Probably personality. It was not the statement that originally was given by the movement when we split. It's more personality than anything else.
You have sometimes it seemed to me been preaching hate to meet hate.
Nation of Islam.
I don't advocate any kind of hate.
But there's a lot of talk that sounds very much like it.
No, I think that the guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America, instead of the American white man eliminating the causes that create that condition, he tries to cover it up by accusing his accusers of teaching hate. But actually, they're just exposing him for being responsible for what exists.
Well, that's something of an argument, but I've heard speeches made by some of the people of your group. I think I've heard you make speeches. It seemed to me that you were advocating what I would have to describe, I think, as violence to meet the serious injuries that have been done your people, with which I totally agree.
I don't call that violence. I don't in any way encourage black people to go out and initiate acts of aggression indiscriminately against whites. But I do believe that the black man in the United States and any human being, anywhere, is well within his right to do whatever is necessary, by any means necessary, to protect his life and property, especially in a country where the federal government itself has proven that it is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of those human beings.
Just before Pierre takes it, you've got a pretty good fighter and the world's heavyweight champion lined up with you to help out. Yes, Pierre.
Well, Mr. X, if I guess I call you that, is that the proper appellation,
Yes.
Mr. X? I'm wondering if you still believe, as I think you certainly did at the time you were allied to the Black Muslim movement, in a segregated black nation in North America.
I don't believe in any form of segregation or any form of racism. I'm against any form of segregation and against racism.
Am I right in saying that the Black Muslim movement, which you have left, did believe in that?
Well, Elijah Muhammad taught his followers that the only solution was a separate state for black people. And as long as I thought he genuinely believed that himself, I believed in him and believed in his solution. But when I began to doubt that he himself believed that that was feasible, and I saw no kind of action designed to bring it into existence or bring it about, then I turned in a different direction.
Now, I love what Malcolm says right here, right? He said, I believed him while I believe he believed, right? But once he saw that that's not what he believed, he then moved in a different direction, right? And I think this is very similar to what we live in America today, right? It's for myself, right? It was like, hey, liberty, justice for all, right? And then when we look at how we are actually moving in this country, right? Right? Like, bruh, everybody in this country isn't held to a moral standard, right? So the only way I could be fair in this country is that I can't hold anybody to a moral standard, right? You can't tell me that people that are running in our banks and intelligence agencies and working in our legislative branch and perhaps our judicial branch are compromised, right? Because they've committed illegal acts, right? Immoral, perhaps, acts, right? Maybe not illegal, maybe just immoral, right? And they're compromised. But when there's somebody that we don't like, we expose that person. We don't expose everybody. We just expose the person we don't like. You no longer have a moral high ground. And I think that's what you're finding right now with a lot of black men is that we're like, hey, as black men, we're being judged on a level that other people are not being judged on, right? Me alone just came out and said, hey, I want young boys because they leave. You know what I'm saying? I want them to come over, do what they do, sign an NDA that they can't tell on themselves, that they can't tell what they came over here and did. They come over here, they bust it down, and then I put them in an Uber or they get their own Uber back and they leave, right? But when men say, all right, I kind of want to do the same thing, right? So I don't even want her to leave. I might want to kick it with her a little bit, right? For men, it's like, there's an imbalance here, right? There's an unfairness here, right? There, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you just get her because you have money. Well, what's the reason that Nia Long gets them, right? Because she's attractive. That's debatable at her age. I think she's a pretty woman, but I wonder if the 23-year-old guy thinks she's an attractive woman, or do he think she's a rich woman and he can get his Hellcat and his PS5 and his Jordans, right? But that's not. But all of a sudden, that's not financial abuse. And I don't think men have a problem if she bought, Hawaiian, Hellcat and PS5 and a pair of Jordans. I don't think they'd be like, well, why you didn't get me that, right? But I think what they're saying is like, hey, when you handle that, and I go over here and buy Chanel, I don't want to hear your mouth, right? They cannot be this complete double standard everywhere. And that is learned through supremacy, right? In this country right now, we have 6 million files, 6 million pieces of a file of people within government, in business, that are doing whatever they want to do, right? And now they're compromised, and we can't get their names. Can't get their names, right? But if someone that you think is a black male studies, professor or teacher or within that organization, if they do it, it's like, oh, look at him, he's taking advantage, right? Yeah, it's a double standard. I mean, absolutely, it's a double standard. But my point is what I'm pointing out is that what black men have realized is that none of your standards stand if we don't pay them attention.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
Of course, I think the Christians would say that they also believed in brotherhood. What did you say to that?
I'd say they believe in it, but don't practice it.
Well, that's a pretty good answer. Sir?
And it's amazing how everything didn't change, except for the fact that I think that we're understanding that they don't even believe in it. They just use it. They just use the verbiage. They just use the quotes. These people have no clue about Christianity. Zero clue. Like I don't think we have to play with it anymore. I don't think we have to sit here and be like, they're Christians also, and they're going to heaven also. These people do not believe in God. They do not. Okay? They absolutely do not. So for those who are believers to sit here and to pretend that these people also believe and that they're just going against God's word, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. These people do not believe in God whatsoever.
Sir, when the muezzin goes up in the minaret twice a day, he cries to the world, there is but one God, and he is Allah. Do you deny that there is a Christian God?
The Muezzin does this 5 times a day.
5 times, and I only heard him twice.
Well, you were fortunate to hear him twice. But he does this 5 times a day, and the same God that he says that he expresses the existence of is the God that the Christians profess to believe in themselves, and the God that the Jews believe in. One God, the creator of the universe. The Muslims believe in the God that created the universe, and I think the Christians do, and the Jews do. Now, as long as all of them are talking about the creator, the Jews may call him Jehovah, and Christians may have another name for him. Those who are Arabic speaking refer to him as Allah. Well, we believe in the same God.
Now, as the Muslim religion advances in the United States, are you modernizing it or sticking with the old faiths? For example, the complete segregation of the sexes.
I think that everything today on this earth is being modernized. Religious principles and practices, as well as political and other things.
Now, when you went to Mecca, this is a very sacred and forbidden city. I tried to get to Mecca myself and certainly didn't make it, not being a Muslim. But how would they accept you as one? You're an American. There are few American Muslims.
This is true, and by being an American and not having not being able to speak the Arabic language, I did strike a snag, a very serious snag, but I was fortunate to have been pretty well known by the officials in Arabia, and they knew too that I had accepted Orthodox Islam. It had been highly publicized in the paper, and I became a guest of the state. I was a guest of Prince Faisal, the present King Faisal, and they made it possible for me to go before the committee, Hajj committee or Hajj court, who examines you and asks you questions about your belief. And if you pass it, then you are okay to go to Mecca. But it's
you would
true.
have to have a translator then.
I had one. Then we realized.
And that's probably why I'm not going to marry a Muslim woman, because if you bring me in front of that court, I'm probably going to fail. But I wanted to play this right here because what Malcolm is explaining right here is the modernization of ideals and beliefs. And I myself sometimes run into a problem of having my ideals modernized, right? Like sometimes there's what I believe, right? And then there's what's going to produce the outcome that's desirable, right? An outcome that's desirable isn't the outcome that I want, right? Like I have a desirable outcome, right? But the outcome that's desirable, which means there's the outcome that will produce the future that you desire to have, right? A lot of times don't come from what you want, right? And I play this because this right here goes with a lot of what we're dealing with right now when it comes to politics, a lot of what we're dealing with right now when it comes to religion. You know, I think that there is going to be a turn back to religion in the next decade in this country. And I think we're in a bad place for it, unfortunately. I don't think we have sophisticated or educated enough leaders to teach how do you bring people back to the ideal of a savior or a creator, right? So when I listen to Malcolm and I listen to him, like one of the things that he says I agree on is like, yeah, I'm not for segregation, right? I often hear people say, you know, we was better off when we were segregated. No, segregation only held back black people, right? It did not keep white people out of black people's spaces, right? So if someone was an abuser, if someone was a predator, that segregation did not protect you from them. You know what I'm saying? It made you more accessible to them because you was in one space. These men, what they were dealing with at the time, integration was the answer, right? But unfortunately, we're in this place in society now that as blacks, right, like what think tank do we have to take the next step, right, to take the next move, right? I think you're seeing educated, sophisticated, masculine black men, by and large, say, I'm pulling back out of the society, right? It's a dangerous place for the black community. I'm part of the problem. I am one of the people that's been calling for a tactical retreat for the past decade, right? And not because I think that's the right answer, just because I think that that's the arc that might save the community if it goes down in flames. Because the way I look at it is that right now the community is heading down in flames. So to go back to the brother's question, like, hey, we have this community where when it comes to black men, we privatize the gains and we socialize the losses. Like, why is that? How do we get out of that? Like my answer is it is an answer of yeah, we got to back out, right? You can't be in a community that hates you, right? You can't be in a community that sees you as an abuser, right? You can't be in a community where you can do it. I mean, I can do it, but you can't do it. Can't do that. You can't do that. And again, I think that's one of the things when it comes to educated, professional, business owners, black males that are single. I think that there's a pushback from the table now. And for black males that are married, I think is a hanging on. And I think we do well in our community to try to hold on to those individuals and ideals, but I think those ideals are of a bygone era. And I think when you look at black men now, there is a modernization of black male thoughts, right? Can we handle black men providing those thoughts to the community without destroying them, right? If a black male has a thought, right, and you disagree with it, I was talking, shit, I tell y'all, because me and Gav part all the time, and one of the things Gav was saying, he was like, I don't think marriage is the goal for a lot of people when they get in relationships now, right? And I think he's right. I don't think it's the goal, right? But I think a lot of black men, when you say, hey, I want access to your body, right? I want your fertility. I want to have your children, right? I want to raise those children, right? I want access to your funds, right? I think with a lot of black men that they're saying, hey, you don't get access to that without giving something back, right? We can't look at that and say, well, that's unfair, right? That's unfair. But we're in a community right now where, if a man and woman has sex, they don't wear protection. He comes and she gets pregnant because she was ovulating and sperm hit the egg and she wants to have the baby. There's nothing he can do to stop her, right? But that exact same society will say, hey, if they're having sex and if she has not given consent for him to come inside of her, and if she says, oh, you know what, we never discussed wearing protection, I thought you was wearing protection, come to find out you wasn't, right? That also is assault, right? So the man has no control over what you do when you want to do it, but he also has no control over regret as well, right? So when a man, when everything after it exits him, he can't control. You have to expect that a lot of those men are going to start saying, you know what, I got to control everything up to that point then. If I don't have any control afterwards, I got to control everything up until that point. We can't look at that and say, well, that's unfair. You're being misogynistic now. You're being controlling. That pendulum, while it does swing both ways, everybody's not on the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. So you got to make sure your time lines up with those men's time. And I do understand educated, sophisticated, masculine black men saying, hey, if my community doesn't listen to me, right? Do I need to still say I'm a part of that community? Right? And my answer to that is, if you're in a community that needs you and that community doesn't listen to you, what's the benefit of you being in that community? Like you got to have a benefit, right? Like we're not a tribe, right? Wait, what is the benefit, right? Let it stand on its own, because one of the things that I have realized is that when it comes to masculine black men, most things that are anti-us only works if we pay attention to it. We are the lean to. And once you're no longer the lean to, everything they say goes away. I said it on the pod today. If someone says something about black men and black men don't pay attention to it, 24 hours, it's gone, right? It doesn't even make it. Doesn't make it from Threads to X. Doesn't make it from X to Facebook, right? But if someone is anti something when it comes to black men, if we don't pay attention to it, it's gone, right? Things only work when we pay attention to it. We don't pay attention to it, it's gone. So your attention is currency. Oh man, but that's all I got. I'm gonna get up out of here. I gotta finish up the night. Appreciate y'all for coming into the room. Again, today's pod did just drop. You can find it everywhere that you listen to podcasts. So please, on your way to work in the morning, please pop in Black Dads Club on the way to work. Finish it up on the way back because it is long. It's about 2 hours long, maybe like an hour, 50 minutes long. And that's all I got, man. Holla at your boy.